here's our squat, here's our skill. Let's get the torso more upright, handle this load, don't make many mistakes, and now let's see if we can add some speed to that. You went back to the ready state. One of the things we're trying to do as we sort of take our high-level concepts of strength conditioning and apply them back into even working with children or people interested in fitness for the first time is ultimately understanding that, hey, we have a set of variables we're going to challenge with another set of variables. So, for example, can you squat with your torso upright? This is a very, very fundamental position, and ultimately that squat gives us a lot of access to being able to jump and land, to absorb force effectively, right? So what we're looking for is making choices around maintaining our options and maintaining sort of the integrity of our position so that it transfers. So, for example, we have our wonderful torturee here. So Coach Jeff is here. And if I say, hey, Jeff, can you do a squat for me? Just give me an air squat. So he squats and just gives an air squat, right? Which is our base for how we ultimately teach a lot of these skills. Now I'm like, hey, can you keep your torso upright? Put your hands behind your neck. And now he air squats. And you can just go slow. All I've done was by having him keep his hands behind his back, of course, his torso is a little bit more upright. But what happens if we give him suddenly a little demand? So now he's got to fight a flexion demand, which is called front squatting or goblet squatting, right? This is how most human beings are grabbing something and squatting. And I'm like, hey, without violating all the principles that we know and kind of value in our movement practice, can you squat again, keeping your torso upright? And suddenly, right, that looks a little bit more upright with his torso. Before I'm like, hey, squat. He's like, no problem. I'll adopt the simplest squat. So now what we've done is said, hey, here's a variable. And our thing that we're valuing is a little bit more upright torso squat. Enter a goblet squat, enter front squat, et cetera, et cetera. Now I'm like, that looks great. He's nailing that. So what happens if I suddenly hand him a wall ball? Because it's easy to throw a lot of shade at wall balls, right? One is that you can only do, at some point the ball becomes too heavy to try to catch. At some point you can only do about 30 to 32 or 33 in a minute, maybe, if you're hauling. Kara Saunders can do a lot more, right? Of course. But the idea here is at some point I max out. So maybe it's not a great stimulus for my advanced athletes other than solid aerobic work, and it's just a nice way to do that. But for my younger athletes, what we've done is said, here's our squat, here's our skill. Let's get the torso more upright, handle this load, don't make many mistakes, and now let's see if we can add some speed to that. So when you suddenly stop viewing exercises as a simple movement choice, like where do I plug this in, and we start to strip back and get to the principles underneath that. Oh, why is wall balling valuable? Well, what it does is it forces an upright squat with high variability, the movement, the ball's coming in from a different direction, and he's got to reproduce. So reproduce this upright torso. And what I'm looking for is, remember we did this last time when we had George in the house, we're trying to reduce that variability in movement. But again, if we strip back and just say, hey, just give me a couple wall balls here, does that bottom position, and go ahead and pause, does that look exactly like it did if he just held that ball and squatted down? And the delta there is really the signature of his competence. And what we end up seeing is that if we don't expose our athletes to speed, we sometimes cannot see their deficiencies in postures, in mechanics, in position, in skill, right? They start to fall apart as soon as there's some little load demand. And this is where we end up selling people sort of a false bill of goods, where we feel like, hey, I worked really hard in the gym. Why isn't this translating to my sport? Well, it turns out maybe we need to be a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit more robust in understanding that this isn't just about getting more work done, but we can reapply that work to make sure that we're reducing the variability. And how do we reduce movement variability? We practice and practice and practice and start to add other demands on top of it. And this one, simple front squat with some speed, right? Oh, I meant wall balls. See you tomorrow.